Hello everyone, this is SyntaxError and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are going to be taking a look at coding the throwing X. First of all, there are a few things that I would like to point out first. Firstly, there are indeed timestamps in the description down below, so you can skip ahead to whatever section you want to skip to. Secondly, there might be quite a lot of codes that are the same from the boomerang video, and that's because I've decided to do a remake of the boomerang video, as there were a lot of bugs like the boomerang going through the ground and it just disappearing if your inventory is full. So yeah, let's get straight into the video. So for the item showcase, we can go ahead and just run the command give throwing X and it'll give us this throwing X. So there is indeed custom damage, so we can go ahead and summon a Ravager and we can go ahead and one tap that. Yeah, and for the item ability, we can right click and it will throw the X. And if we go ahead and summon a Ravager again, it will indeed one tap the Ravager again. So yeah, let's get straight into the coding then. For the coding part, we are going to go ahead and create a new Java class to start off with the items design. So we're going to type in, we're going to call it item manager. Then now we are going to create a public static item stack, and we're just going to call it throwing X. Now we're going to create a public static void and call it init for initialization, and we're just going to leave it as it is for now. Then we can create a private static void and call it create throwing X. Put our brackets and curly brackets. We need to do this. Then we can go ahead and do item stack item equals to a new item stack. And in the brackets, we're going to place material, which in this case would be a netherite X. Then we can put a comma and put its amount as 1. Now we're going to get the item meta. So we're going to do item meta equals to item.getItemMeta. Now we're going to set the display name of the item. So we're going to do meta.setDisplayName and put our speech marks in the brackets, and we're going to go ahead into this website to copy the color code. The link will be down in the description. So we're just going to copy the symbol and we're going to paste it in. Then we are going to type 6 for gold color. Then we are going to type throwing X for its name. Now we're going to create the lore. So to do that, we're going to have to create a list string, and we're just going to call it lore equals to a new array list. Then we can go ahead and import our list. Now we're going to add our lore. So lore.add, and in the first line, we're going to paste in our color code, put a 7 for gray in color. Then we're going to type damage, colon space, paste in the color code again, and type C for red in color, and put the damage as plus 70. Now we're going to add an empty line of lore just to separate two different sections of lore. Then now we're just going to add another line, paste in the color code, put in a 6 for gold color, and type item ability, colon, throw. Then we're going to paste in our color code again and put E and type right click. The E is for yellow in color. Then now we're going to add another line of lore, paste in our color code, 7 for gray, throw your X and deal. Then we're going to add another line of lore and put C this time for the color code, 1000. Then paste in the color code again with a 7, damage. Then we forgot our full stop. Okay, so the lore's done. Now the next thing that we're going to do is type lore.add. Now the next thing that we're going to want to do is type meta.setLore as our lore. Then we can go ahead and add the custom damage now. So we can go ahead and do attribute modifier and call it damage equals to a new attribute modifier, and type uuid.random uuid in the brackets, and put in a comma and speech marks and type generic.attack damage. Then we're going to put in a comma and type in the amount of damage we want the X to deal. So in this case, it would be 70. And now we're going to put another comma and type attribute modifier dot operation dot add number. Then we can go ahead and put a comma and put its equipment slot as our hand. So it's only going to deal the 70 attack damage when it is in the player's main hand. Now we're going to do meta dot add attribute modifier, and we're going to put attribute dot generic attack damage, put a comma and put our damage. Now that's the custom damage done. So the last things that we'll have to do is do item.set item meta as our meta, and finally we can go ahead and set throwing X equals to our item. Then we can go back into our init that we created just now and just type create throwing X. And now we're going to go back into our main class, into our on enable class, and type item manager dot init. So that's the items design done. Now we can move on with the item commands. For the item commands, we're going to go ahead and create that's the wrong one. We're going to go ahead and create, that's also the wrong one. We're going to go ahead and create a new Java class, and we're just going to name it commands. And as usual, we're going to do implements command executor. Then now we can go ahead and type public boolean on command. So we're just going to call it on command and type command sender, comma, command cmd, comma, string label. That's not how we spell label. And finally, string, square brackets, args. Then we are going to go ahead and import both command and command sender. So after that's done, first of all, we're going to run an if statement to check if the sender of the command is a player. So we're just going to do if so we're just going to type if exclamation mark for the opposite of sender instance of player. So if the sender is not a player, we're going to do sender.send message, as only players can use that command. Then we are going to return true. And we're going to create an else statement. So if the sender is a player, we're going to get the sender first. So player equals to bracketed player sender. Now we're going to check if the player is opt or not. So if player dot is opt. Now we're going to run another if statement to check if the player asked for the throwing X. So we're just going to do if cmd dot get name dot equals ignore case, and over here we're going to type the command that has to be issued. So in this case, it's going to be give throwing X. So if the player runs the give throwing X command, we are going to do player dot get inventory dot add item manager dot throwing X. So it's just going to add the X directly into their inventory. Then we are just going to create an else statement. So if the player that sent the command is not opt, we're going to do sender.send message, you are not allowed to use this command. Then we can go outside of the else statement and just return true. So with that, we can move on into our plugin.yml to list the commands. Then we can type commands, and we're going to type the exact same thing that we typed here, which is give throwing X, and I'm not going to risk typing it wrongly, so I'll just copy and paste that in. Then we're going to set the description as gives the player a throwing X, and put the usage as slash angle bracket command close angle bracket. Now we're going to move on back into our main class to list the command once again. So we're going to do that by doing list dot get command, and in the brackets we're going to put speech marks, and we're just going to paste back the exact same command again. Then we're going to put dot set executor new commands. Basically the commands is the name of our commands class. So now the commands are all done, we can move on with the items function. For the items function, we're going to go ahead and create a new Java class, and we are just going to call it throwing X. Now, as usual, we are going to implement listener. Now we're going to create a constructor first. So we're going to type the name of the plugin first, which in this case is custom items. And we are going to type plugin. Then we can create a public, and then we're going to type the name of the class. So throwing x, and in the brackets, we're going to type the name of the plugin again and type plugin. Then we can type this dot plugin equals to our plugin. Now we can go ahead and move on to our add event handler. So we can type add event handler and type public void on interact. Then we can go ahead and type player interact event and put event. Now we're gonna check if the player is right clicking or not first. So we're gonna type if event dot get action dot equals to action dot right click block, or event dot get action dot equals to action dot right click error. Then we are going to get the player. So player equals to event dot get player. Now we're gonna check if the player is holding the throwing X or not, and it's going to be kind of lengthy. So we're gonna do if player dot get inventory dot get item in main hand dot get item meta is not null, and player dot get inventory dot get item in main hand dot get item meta dot get lore is not null. Then we are just going to move down and put n so that it's easier to see. Then we're going to type player dot get inventory dot get item in main hand dot get item meta dot get lore dot contains, and over here we are going to get a line of lore that is unique to the item. So in this case, we are just going to get this line of lore and paste it in. And the reason why we are doing all of these null checks is so that our console doesn't get spammed with null pointer exceptions. Now we're going to get the damage that the item is going to do. So we're going to do string lore equals to player dot get inventory dot get item in main hand dot get item meta dot get lore dot get, and to get the index, we are going to go ahead into our item manager and count the lore. So for example, our damage is here. We are just going to count 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we can get it from the 4th index. So we're just going to type 4 here, and we are going to create a list string, and we are going to call it lore split equals to a new array list. Then in the brackets, we're going to type arrays dot as list, and then we are going to type lore dot split and put the regex as a space. Then we can put our semicolon and import arrays, import array list, and import list. Then we can go ahead and create a string and put damage equals to lore split dot get 0. And the reason why 0 and the reason why we are doing this is if we head back into our item manager, once we've gotten the 4th index, it will get this entire line of lore. So what the split does is that it's going to split it to 2 different indexes based on the space. So we can actually see that our damage is located at the 0th index in that case. Now we are going to do damage equals to damage dot replace all, and in the brackets we're going to put our speech marks and copy the color code and paste it right in and put a comma and replace it with nothing. Basically, we are getting rid of the color code, and we are also going to replace the comma. So we are also going to get rid of the comma. And now the next step would be to do string, and we're just going to call it final damage equals to damage. And the reason why we are going to need to do this is because we are going to be getting the value of our damage from, and we are going to be accessing the damage from an inner class later, and it has to be a final value or an effectively final. So we're going to need to convert it first. Now we're going to spawn in the armor stand. So we're going to type armor stand, and we're just going to call it AS and put our bracketed armor stand. Player dot get world dot spawn entity, and put the location as player dot get location dot add 0, 0.5, 0. And the reason why we're just adding 0.5 to the y-axis is just to push the armor stand slightly higher to make it so as if it's to the player's hand. Then we can go ahead and type entity type.armor stand. Now we're going to customize our armor stand. So we're just going to do as.set. That's the wrong one. As.set arms as true because we need it to hold our X. Then we can set the gravity as false, so it does not bounce. Then we can go ahead and put as.set visible as false as well, so the player can't see it. As.set small as true. As.set marker as true as well, so that the collision box is smaller and the player won't be able to interact with it. And now we're going to set the item in hand to a new item stack, and we're going to put its material as a netherite X. Then we are going to set the right arm pose. So as.set right arm pose, and we're going to create a new Euler angle for this. Then we are just going to type in the brackets math.2radians. We are just going to put it as 90, comma math.2radians 0, comma math.2radians as 0 as well. So basically this will rotate the X upright. Then we can go ahead and remove a throwing X from the player's inventory. So we're just gonna type that's the wrong one, player.getInventory dot get item in main hand dot set amount. That's not the correct one. Set amount as player.getInventory dot get item in main hand dot get amount -1. And the reason why we are doing this instead of just doing dot remove item is because, for example, if the player has a throwing X in the first slot of his inventory and also has a throwing X in the second slot of their inventory, if they right click with the second slot's throwing X, we do not want it to remove the first slot's throwing X but the second slot instead. So we're not going to do dot remove item. Instead, we are going to set the amount as -1. Now we're going to create a location. So location, and we're just going to call it dest, which stands for destination. We go to player.getLocation.add, and in the brackets we're going to type player.getLocation.getDirection.multiply by 10. Then we are going to create a vector, and we're just going to name it vector equals to dest.subtract player.getLocation, and we're going to move outside of the brackets to convert it to a vector. So we're just going to type .toVector and import our vector. And then now we're going to move on to create a new Bookit runnable. Basically what a Bookit runnable is that it acts something like a timer or a loop or a timed loop. So for example, it will run every few ticks based on what you set it to. So we're just going to type new Bookit runnable. Then we are going to put our curly brackets, and we're going to create two ints first. So the first one we're going to create is its distance. So we're just going to set it to 30, and you can change it, you can increase it or decrease it depending on how far you want the X to go. Now we're going to create an I, which is just for comparison use. Then we are going to create a public void run. Now we're going to create an Euler angle, and we're just going to call it rot, which stands for rotation, and put as.getRightArmPose. Now we're going to create another Euler angle and call it rot new, which stands for rotation new, and put rot.add vector. That's not the correct one. Rot.add 20 0 0. So this will just set the rotation, and we are going to set the right arm pose to rot new. That's not supposed to be a space. So basically this will just rotate the X as it moves forward. Then we are going to do as.teleport, as.getLocation.add vector.normalize. That's not the correct one. Vector.normalize. So this will move the armor stand forward. Then we're going to run an if statement. So we are going to check if the armor stand has a block in front of it. So we're just going to type if as.getTargetBlock exact one, which gets the block directly in front of them, is not null. And basically what this means is that if it's not air, and exclamation mark as dot get target block exact one dot is passable. So this checks if the block is not passable. So for example, passable blocks will mean something like grass and kelp. So we do not want our armor stand to be removed if the block is passable. Then we are going to run another check if AS is not dead. So if the armor stand is not dead, then we are going to remove it. And we are going to run another if statement to check if the player inventory is full. So player.getInventory dot first empty is not -1. Then if it is not full, we are going to get inventory dot add item manager dot throwing x. Basically what this line of code does is because get inventory dot first empty will get the first slot that's empty in the inventory, and if the inventory is full, it is going to return a -1. So basically this checks if the player inventory is not full. Then you can run an else statement. So if the player inventory is full, we are going to drop the item. So player.get, that's the wrong one. Player.get world dot drop item naturally, and we're going to drop it at the player's location. So player.get location, and we're going to drop item manager dot throwing x as the item stack. Then we're going to move out of the else statement and just cancel the for loop. Not the for, sorry, the bookit runnable, so it does not lag our server. Now we are going to run an enhanced for loop to check if our throwing x is passing through an entity. So we're just going to do entity colon as.get location dot get chunk dot get entities. Then we're just going to import entities. It's going to get all the entities within the armor stand's chunk. Then we are also going to run another if statement to check if our armor stand is dead. Then we are going to run an if statement if the armor stand dot get location dot distance squared, in the brackets we're going to type entity dot get location, and we are going to move out is less than or equals to 1. So basically this line of code just checks if the entity is within a block of the armor stand. Then only we want it to be removed, we want it to be damaged. So we're just gonna check if our entity is not our player, and if our entity is not our armor stand, so it does not damage our player. Then we are going to check if our entity is instance of living entity. So if it is a living entity, we are just going to cast it. So we are going to do living entity equals bracketed living entity. Why we are converting it to a living entity is because entities include things such as boats and minecarts, and those cannot be damaged. So in order to damage our entity, we have to convert it to a living entity. Then we are just going to do living entity dot damage, and we are just going to do integer dot parseInt, and we are just going to put our final damage and move outside and put the damager as our player. So whenever it gets damaged, the damage is dealt by the player. Yeah, and the reason why we have to convert it to final damage is because, for example, if we remove the final and just get the damage, we can actually see that it returns an error. It's because for it to be accessed from an inner class, it has to be either final or effectively final. So to do that, we have to convert it. So after that's done, we can just go ahead and copy and paste the lines of code because we just need to run the exact same things. So it's going to start from the armor stand dot remove to the cancelling of the bookit runnable. Then now we can go ahead and run another if statement. If I is more than our distance. So basically, if our throwing X timer has expired. If the I is more than distance, then we are also going to check if our understand is dead. I mean, if our understand is not dead. Then we're also going to do the exact same thing, so we're just going to paste in the code again. After that, we can head outside of our if statement, and we can just do I++. Then we're just going to move here and just type .run task timer and put our plugin here and put 0L as the delay and 1L as the period. So basically, what this does is that it's going to run these codes once every one tick, which is basically there are 20 ticks in 1 second. Yeah, just a quick note. And our last step would be just to do event.setCancel as true, and we are done with this class. Now all we have to do is move back into our main class and register the event. So we are going to do this .get server, .get plugin manager, .register events, and we are just going to type new throwing x, which is the name of the class, and we are just going to put this outside, both inside brackets, and put a comma and this outside. So that's basically all of it done. Now we just have to build the artifacts, and I'll see you in the test server. Alright, we are back in our test server, and now we can go ahead and run the command give throwing x, and it will give us this throwing x. So if we go ahead and summon a Ravager, for example, we will be able to deal the custom damage, and we will be able to throw our x. So we can just throw it as chicken. Yeah, so that's that, I guess. That's it for today's video, I guess. So if you did enjoy today's video, please leave a like and subscribe. It will be greatly appreciated. And if you do have any suggestions for future tutorials or plugins, please feel free to leave a comment down below. And with that all said, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you when I see you in the next video. Bye!